we have been adopting 3D more formally over the last, I would say, 4 years. And we started sort of by focusing on digital product creation for customer-facing and dealer-facing applications, and then have been sort of moving that back earlier and earlier in the development process, which I'm sure a lot of you are dealing with the same thing now. So yeah, those are kind of my areas. I've been with Arc'teryx for about 6.5 years, and my background is in business analysis.
Yeah. Arc'teryx, I mean, I always assume I'm Canadian. Arc'teryx is Canadian. I went from Toronto and lived the last 30 years in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is where they're at, actually on the very street where Arc'teryx is. And so I know them intimately well as kind of the premier outdoor, facilitating luxury in hiking. And some of the proud moments are, when I drive down that street on Dollarton Highway in North Vancouver, they'll do these random, customer factory store outlet sales, and it's literally lined up around the street. And then when I go to China, I'm in Shanghai, the new colorway comes out, and it's lined up around the block. And so, we have a lot of customers at Centric who utilize our solutions. Arc'teryx is this unique, they create color sometimes. They create and they manufacture on their own, and you can see one walking away when you can't see the logo, and it's a source of pride in Vancouver, which is awesome. So if you guys don't know who they are, that's who I know them as. Maybe describe for yourself, assume, even though they kind of do, give us your interpretation of who Arc'teryx is.
Yeah, sure. So Arc'teryx is a Canadian brand specializing in technical apparel, gear, anything to support mountain athletes or really anyone that is wanting to get outside, do their activities and not have to deal with wetness or cold or any of those things. So I guess one of our distinguishing features is we design for purpose. All of our designers are also athletes that specialize in the activities that they design for. So they're always looking for design problems. They're always looking to solve real problems in their area, in their sport. And that's kind of where we start from. And we're also trying to produce product that can last forever, product that can be circular. So if someone is done with their Gore-Tex jacket, they can return it and someone else can get it and it just lasts and lasts, or product that can be fixed. So those are some of our goals. Yeah.
Yes. And you're doing it really well. We partner with you first. There's a complicated organizational structure at Arc'teryx and the ownership group. And so, Anta has now acquired Almer, which owns Solomon and Arc'teryx and Atomic and Wilson. These are all customers of ours and partners with us. But Arc'teryx sort of utilizes us in a better way than most. And I'll give you a couple examples before I ask my next question. But they adopted our PLM. They embraced our visual boards. They embraced our data model. But they've actually innovated a few things with us on some of their projects. So you reminded me of one where you said, we test with athletes. And so one of them was they built our, right from their mind, we said, what's one of your challenges? When we go out for fit, it's really being used. And we do these Frankenstein versions of a product, and we want feedback out in the field. And the guy who's run this one group is a real badass guy. And he's like, I want it to be like this. And it's a lot of asking somebody on a mountaintop or, God forbid, in a military situation, or on and on and on, in real use cases. And they said, then they were asking him to come back and use PDF and all these reviewers and Excel. And he's like, I just wish there was an app. And so we walked him through it. We workshopped it. We built that app right out of this guy's head. And it's one of our apps that we provide to our customer base. Not everybody's up for that journey. Not everybody's willing to tackle a problem and embrace a technology partner. It's super cool to us. Maybe describe, your point of view of the ownership group and some of the, benefits and challenges.
Of the ownership group.
Yeah.
Oh, like the whole, I see.
Yeah.
So as Joe said, we're part of a group of brands that are under Amber and then heavily invested in by Anta Sports. Everybody's different, but everybody is sort of sports and athletics oriented. Obviously, everyone here probably is aware of Salomon and their like footwear and ski business and all of that. There's also Atomic. We've got Peak Performance, who's based in Sweden, and we've got Wilson and Ball Sports that's based in Chicago area and so forth. So yeah, it's been really interesting to work with all of them. We have some shared services. A lot of our sort of common technology services, middleware and so forth, have been based in France. So we frequently collaborate with all of our sort of sister brands across the world. And at the same time, we all have very different businesses. We all have different philosophies, different mission statements. We serve, in some cases, different markets, and we do things differently because we all formed separately. So that was, I guess, part of the genesis of our relationship with Centric. Originally at Arc'teryx, we had a homegrown system that was sort of very purpose-built specifically for us when we were quite a bit smaller. The whole company started as sort of a bunch of climbers in North Vancouver that wanted to build a better harness and wanted it to be more comfortable and not like cut in as much to their legs and like be more usable. So as the brand grew, apparel got added, some more gear and so forth. So we needed a system. A system was built by, I think, a husband and wife team that there were like fun little things. Like you could go into this one menu and there's like a little song and there were little jokes when you're looking at tooltips in different places. But we totally outgrew that system. We like way outgrew it, before we even could retire it. Mm-hmm. But eventually, some years back, after I started, but a few years back, they were going to move to a new ERP and also adopt a more kind of mainstream PLM system. And yeah, so we replaced, the system was called the Arc'teryx system, or TAS. And so we had to replace that. So that was definitely a journey.
Yeah.
And in working with the group brands, like Salomon had already been using Centric. So I think originally when we first started looking at Centric as a PLM system, the thought was, well, Salomon's already using it. Let's just adopt and join their instance and we'll all work together as a big happy family of group brands. And as those conversations unfolded, it became very clear that there's no way that was going to happen. Everybody had totally different data models. They had different processes that had to be handled. And so it became clear that everyone needed sort of their own instance and their own stuff.
Those days, so Taz and the couple that built it, real creative guy, named Guy. And I went into a meeting with IT and my head of innovation was meeting with Guy because he's really trying to understand Taz. And then he came out with this real awesome, like glass blown vase, real creative. I'm like, where'd you get that? Because we just left each other at a meeting. He went to that meeting, I went to this meeting. Comes out and he's like, Guy hand blows glass as his hobby. And so I took a picture of it and brought it home. It became the centerpiece of the giveaways at my wedding. My wife got a hold of them and had them dynamically make them. And now when I go into like my president's front door, the vase from my wedding is the first thing I see. When I go into my brother, my sister's, it's the same vase. And so it's like, Arc'teryx is near and dear. But back in the day when that all went down, it actually went down a little differently than because just before you got there. Salomon really wanted to get a new system and they didn't want to inherit task. Arc'teryx said, no, we're staying put. It's customized for us. Fast forward 3 years, Arc'teryx was pushing. Now it's our turn to go. But I had to fly from North Vancouver to Annecy, France to get that deal done. But it was Arc'teryx that was pushing. And it was supposed to be, Salomon was a simpler use case. We'll configure to that. And then we'll add the complexity of Arc'teryx, and it all went sideways. And so an interesting lesson learned, which I want you to dive into a little more, is we subsequently did an analysis of harmonization or not. Should we? And we've done it with like Acushnet, which is Titleist and FootJoy and shoes and all these things. And we did a harmonization. We said, you know what? There's a lot of advantages of having all these brands in one system. And to harmonize, like you guys have shared services and other things. But sometimes the answer is no. it should not be, but let the data drive that. And so you do a lot of that in your role. You do a lot of sort of like, let the data drive the behavior or the decision. Give me, dig a little more into your role and the sort of day in the life of what you do.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, one of my roles is to help support all of the integrations out of Centric. And for that, there's obviously like a business team on the downstream side that is benefiting from that integration. There's a system that they use and they need certain data in that system. And also there's teams on the upstream side. Those are the teams that are feeding the data into the PLM system. So they're the raw material teams are building and adding, all of those raw materials and their different attributes to the raw materials library or whatever. So we did an integration into our customs automation system, like the system that helps us automate classification and free trade agreement qualification of all of our products. Because we're an international brand, we ship all over the world from our various suppliers into the various places where we distribute. And we had to really understand kind of what was needed in that system. We ended up building a bunch of customized attributes in Centric in order to support that. And to do that, to really understand that, I had to like almost embed with the customs team. So now I'm kind of like the junior customs expert, which I never thought that would be part of my role.
One of your many expertise. So I should have at the beginning mentioned, like you have a unique starting point in my point of view. Just for fun, I can describe your academic career because it's kind of misaligned. I mean, I'm kind of similar in what I do now and what I was planning to do. But yours is kind of awesome, no offense. And so I know you'll probably blush, but tell us about your academic career.
Yeah, it's kind of random. So I've only been in apparel and consumer goods as long as I've been at Arc'teryx for the last 6.5 years. So when I originally went to school, I studied chemical engineering and biochemical engineering. I ended up getting a PhD in that from UC Berkeley, and that was like just wrapping up just as sort of the tech boom was happening in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was really tired of pipetting things. And I'd done some kind of software modeling for my thesis work. So I applied to some chemical engineering type companies, but also to some software companies in the Bay Area, and they were basically hiring anyone that could fog a mirror at that point. So I got a job in like customer relationship management software and did that for a while. And then I was like a technology evangelist for a haptics company that was like a startup where haptics is like force feedback. So we worked a lot with like video game companies, but also with like BMW or anyone that could use sort of some haptic in their controls. I think we worked on some projects with medical device simulations for like training nurses how to catheterize a patient or something like that and add some haptics to that. Like that kind of random stuff. And then from there, I ended up moving with my then boyfriend, now husband, to London, Ontario, where he was in business school, and I needed a job there so I could get a visa since I was American and needed some way to live in Canada legally. So they had a business analyst position, and I ended up being a business analyst in higher ed for a while. When we moved to Vancouver, I did that too for a while, had some kids, took some time off, went back into business analysis for a local university. And then it was time to leave the unionized environment that I got kind of sick of. So then Arc'teryx was also down the road, and someone I rode with in Deep Cove was also like a business analyst and hiring business analysts at Arc'teryx. So that's how I got.
When did the MIT? When did you?
That was my undergrad. That was my chemical engineering.
So
undergrad.
I forgot to mention that. The undergrad at MIT, it's just awesome. But the data model now it clicks a little bit. Right? Because, everybody's on this digital transformation journey. It depends where your starting point and where you're coming from. Give us a little landscape of this sort of technology architecture. The data model is near and dear to Centric. We think if you get that right, then you can, utilize your best practice in your process. But if you can't work at the data model, you're done. And so I just want to understand like give us the landscape of all the challenges of all the systems and that kind of architecture for us.
Yeah. So I guess one thing that like I've just been working with the group that works with the PLM with Centric since about 2020. I joined, and around that time we were also like increasingly aggressively moving from our old system into a new ERP system. We adopted SAP. So we had to like really understand all of the data that we were moving, all of the data that we were moving into. We ended up sort of against best advice from Centric, redoing our whole product hierarchy to fit our new ERP system and so forth. But in doing that, I became really familiar with the data structures in Centric, and actually I'm really fond of it. Like it's all very kind of business object based. So it's a very kind of relational data structure. So if any of you work with relational databases, there's sort of a core object and it's related to other related objects. Like there's children and there's parents and there's keys that link two things together that are related. And then really like that helps you kind of make sense of the whole business and all of the key user groups that use Centric and how they relate to one another. So even though they don't necessarily know how they relate to one another, you can sort of see how the whole thing holistically works together and how each depends on the others. And then that's also very useful for understanding in order to do these outbound integrations and understand like what it is you need to export, what attributes are important, what attributes fit where, like what belongs to what. So I don't know, it's fun for me. Like I like seeing how all that stuff connects together.
We have a counterpart on our side, Ravi, who's our CTO. He's in the Engineering Hall of Fame. Who knew there was an Engineering Hall of Fame? But there is one. And his contribution is in the field of data modeling to the field of engineering, which is amazing. But it's the core of what is possible for us is you get the data model right, and it facilitates our ability to move with a changing need. So I find a lot of times some of our customer partners, they get wrapped around a need or a change or a willingness to integrate, and the decision criteria might not be valid or even done. And so walk us through a few examples of like why that integration or not, or a change that you need to facilitate on a digital level from the data model and the architecture and the systems. How do you go about like figuring out whether to do it or not? And just kind of walk us through. I think Arc'teryx does this kind of in a best practice way. I think would be great for people to understand. Like
whether to integrate a particular thing?
Like don't integrate for it. We always say like, if it doesn't change the decision, well, like some people just go crazy with integration and it's just wasted effort and money, and then things move. No one even looks at that attribute or that report, or that it doesn't drive a decision. And so how do you guys assess that? Like how do you decide whether to do it or not?
I mean, I think our goal is always like, how do we make the work of our business teams easier? So if people have manually integrated two systems, meaning they're looking at this screen and retyping all that data into this other screen, then that probably is a good candidate for automation and integration. I mean, an obvious one is, like everything used to be in one system, sort of. I mean, it was also like that one system and a lot of spreadsheets. But now, from PLM system, which owns all of the product data and is sort of our single source of truth of product data, we need to get all that product data into our ERP system so we can transact with all those products, right? We need to sell them, and we need to order them from suppliers. So we need all that product data in there. So we had to figure out like how to do that, how to trigger that. We hadn't previously had SKUs in our Centric system, and there's not really any activity necessarily around SKUs on that part of the business that uses Centric. But we decided that we would, like, we already had models, we had colorways for the models, and then we decided to actually like build the SKU records in Centric so that those could then be, again, the source of truth for all of the downstream systems. We could establish the IDs, and then those would be the key that linked that SKU through all the different systems that use it. So it goes to the ERP system. We send the information about those SKUs and all of their sort of parent objects to our product information system that then feeds the content on our website. So yeah, stuff like that. Yeah.
What about what's coming next? There's change, like, I kind of see us as, the change agent vendor, right? We're good at change. Change is easy for us. And I think systematically sometimes, it's not. You're stuck in a system. We don't like to say the customized word. So I know you said we customize some attributes. We configured some attributes. No offense, but it's a word for us. It's a no-no. Instead, we're like, no, we didn't do that. We didn't customize anything. We're configure. But we want to be that. It's good to sell a technology stack that meets requirements now, but it's really the constant changing needs. So tell us what's coming. What changes are.
I mean, the business is always changing. Like, even looking back a few years ago, I think when I started, most of our business was all in-house development, and we would do like everything from pattern, design, pattern making, and we would send out for the first round of samples, and only then would we send the tech packs off to the suppliers. And now we do a lot more direct development and co-development, so we have a lot more relationships with trusted supplier partners that we know can do that kind of work for us. But that means we have to communicate with them a lot earlier, like what's the design intent and what are they supposed to be pattern making for? What are all the details, and how do we do that in a streamlined way? So that's in many ways pushed the 3D enablement part for like further upstream into our design and development process, because we need to be able to communicate in like a realistic way to those suppliers what it is they're supposed to be building. So I guess that's been sort of a big change in terms of the integrations. Like, we've been using, there's like a native batch exporter. I think it's called the Gateway Exporter in Centric. So we use these sort of nightly pre-defined batches that can be either incremental or sort of full data set, but we're really like reaching the end of the capability of that for what we're trying to do, and the amount that it affects the performance of the system if we're doing it like at the time when everyone else is like hitting the system with their daily tasks. So we generally run those overnight, but now we're realizing that we really need something more sustainable and more scalable. So one thing we're about to implement, Centric has this high-speed exporter capability that basically replicates the data in the Centric database, which is not queryable at all. It's not structured to be a queryable database, but it replicates it into a queryable database that you can build views against, and you can configure it to say, like, not all the business objects move, but like these are the business objects that we want to be able to report on, we want to be able to integrate from. And so, yeah, so that's coming for us.
Nice.
Yes.
I'm going to throw you a couple curveballs we didn't potentially prep for.
Sure.
How would you score yourself on the journey to meet your sustainability goals?
Arc'teryx as a company?
Yeah. I mean, when I think of Arc'teryx, they got to be one of the leading brands in sustainability, just in your philosophy and your mindset and your mission and just your DNA of who you are. From your level, how you think you're doing?
I mean, I think we're like, it's definitely one of our kind of big goals. Like, one of our core kind of mission statements is to leave it better. Like, generally, whatever we do, like, leave the world better for whatever we're doing. So we're trying to innovate in materials and make them long lasting, trying to get stuff that's not like, creating a bunch of waste when it's being made. We try to utilize all the material that we order. We try to use more kind of sustainable manufacturing processes for the raw materials and so forth. We're also investing heavily into more of a circular economy where, like I mentioned, people can sell their gear back, return it back, and then it gets resold at a like a lower price to other people, but it's still like totally has tons of life in it. We're also putting kind of more kind of repair centers in various of our retail locations, so people can bring their stuff back if it's got a broken zipper, or like something has delaminated, then someone can go and fix it, or there's a tear, it'll maybe be like cosmetically not perfect, but it'll still be totally functional.
Yeah, makes sense. Second curveball. I'm just curious. I mean, we got about 4 minutes. She knows the last question I'm going to ask her, so I'll save it. But, I've done a lot of these sessions with different customer partners in different roles. I always find they get bombarded when they leave because they're like, oh, she'd be great resource to. Anybody got a real burning question you'd like to ask? Shout it out if you do. Unless you'd rather make it a private conversation. I'm just curious if anybody wants to know a little more that I haven't asked back there.
That the only part can be Centric to help correct that they slow
Yeah, so I think like we have all of our suppliers in Centric, and we're trying to sort of they need to meet certain standards to be our suppliers. So we're trying to sort of catalog all of those capabilities for them. It's not like I'm getting out of my depth here. So I think I've sat in on a couple of meetings, but yeah, we're trying to track those capabilities, how they're meeting those standards.
And it's actually a question I can help maybe with. So, we tried to figure out what kind of partner can we be? Because, this is coming, right? It's coming in different regions, different countries. Some of it's already legislated a lot in Europe. So we started to, a lot of things we do at Centric, we get like experts from industry. And so we actually ended up with 72 kind of outdoor brands in the Nordics in Europe. Helly Hansen, like a lot of leading people. And we actually got them to come together. We came up with these 5 pillars, and we're like, the software, we're talking about attributes. It's not like a magic sauce, here's your sustainability software. It's like, you need to think this through and decide to manage it. It's the data. And so attribute, yes or no. Who can see it? And it's got to go all the way through the thing. And then you need the external proof point. Did you really do that proof point? So we're pushing on Hig, we're pushing on Blue Sign, we're pushing on all these guys. Cute that you're monitoring these 11 things. There's 62 things you should be looking at. And my customers want that attribution because they want to report it. And then, so we help in a consultative way. It's not, the software is the software. You could have done this, but what's your strategy around it? And can you prove it? And is it part of your marketing because you're an outdoor awesome brand? Or is it part of your trying to catch up to legislation that's either already there or about to be there? And I think there's areas for improvement. So I'm proud of the 72 because they're talking to each other and they're dead competitors. Like it's pretty awesome. And we've learned a lot from them, but we got to push further. You need that sort of external source to be true. And then, it used to be all of our customers were get your vendors and your suppliers so you can improve your margins, so you can get better visibility, so you can get the time to market faster. Now it's so you can prove the chain, right? And so it's really just consultative strategy that we're doing with our customers to say, like, you own it, you just didn't turn those things on, you didn't manage it, right? And so if you're not measuring it, you can't improve it. And so one of the things we're doing is we're trying to teach people how to do their vendor scorecards. And we're like, so Bass Pro, for example, they're like, if it's under 80% on a score, and the score of 80 is a complicated thing in the system, but designers and sourcing can't see that vendor if you're under 80. And it might be just like they're within 6 months of their social compliance or something. Or it might be they're failing in these ways. And so it's kind of the way we're trying to help. I'm conscious of time. I think I'm at it. So I'll ask this last. Oh, sorry. Sure.
So you have your vendor set up in your back application. Do you want to share your data or challenges, everything through Centric design and your vendor portal? Or
we've implemented the supplier portal both for our raw material suppliers as well as our finished goods suppliers.
Not just for your vendor, but raw your.
Yeah, also our raw material vendors. Like we arrange with our raw material vendors. Like that's part of the sustainability capabilities, right? Because we need to know where the whole vertical comes from. Yeah, and we actually manage our raw material purchase orders requests through Centric as well. And then
it's more of the not a whole package business. It's more material than can be.
I mean, I think in Arc'teryx's case, yes. And by the way, they probably like excel in this use case. Some of our customers have pretty arm length. just give me a sample and a quote, man. Come on, this is pretty easy, right? Some people are tech pack full. Some people are a blend of both. Yes for footwear, no for apparel. It's a blend. And so these guys have gone. They're getting ahead of this because, like I said, they're kind of, you think of them as this like sustainable, awesome engine. So they needed to go to the raw material level. Not all customers do, and it's again one of those starting points on the journey. But yeah, options. You should iterate. We got a lot of examples of how to do that.
We're done.
I'm a little over time, but I'll ask one more question out there before I ask the last one.
We don't have any AI at this point, just because we are so kind of purpose driven. Like we're not looking for broad ideation to move ourselves forward. We're looking at a particular like functional need and how to solve that. And I don't know that AI would necessarily help us do that more than our sort of specialist designers who kind of know the need.
But we do. So some of our customers are using us for AI for pricing insights on their competitors in the market. They're doing it for inventory optimization. They're doing it for inspiration. We can build a bill of materials with an AI thing that's like you or your competitors and populate the PL as it's pretty next level AI. You can't just grow up one morning and wake up and say, I'm going to leverage AI. You'll get hallucinogenic results. You got to have the data and you have to understand the structure of the data. And so we've been doing that for years. And so we acquired 3 different company technology and built some of our own. And so we pointed AI at real specific industry use cases. Works great. We're going to cut this off with one last question.
That's okay.
We're good?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
I was going to ask her some advice on what she would tell herself from 5 years ago, but you guys can ask her that later. And awesome. I hope that was valuable. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.